If you don't know about this story, you need to. The Biden administration is challenging a Tennessee law that prohibits doctors from performing gender transition surgery and other procedures on minors. The Supreme Court is set to hear the case in December, and the court's decision could have a profound impact on the safety, security, and well-being of America's children. Here's Wendy Griffith.
Tennessee passed the law last year, banning children from receiving hormone therapy, puberty blockers, and gender surgery. Those suing say the transgender patients must have the right to these treatments. Child advocates disagree, saying they're harmful.
We know, based on research, based on clinical practice, based on growing international consensus, that these interventions for minors are not based on any credible evidence that the benefits outweigh the risks. There are a growing number of teenagers and young adults who say that they have been harmed.
Leor Sapir of the Manhattan Institute hopes the case, United States versus Scrametti, will expose what he calls the Biden administration's extreme and dangerous transgender agenda when it comes to surgeries for kids.
They eliminated age minimums from their standard of care recommendations under pressure from Dr. Rachel Levin, the Assistant Secretary for Health at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
This is an opportunity for the court to put an end to this nonsense.
Ed Whalen with the Ethics and Public Policy Center notes that the World Professional Association for Transgender Health proposed age minimums for trans surgery, a recommendation that Levine, a transgender male, refused.
Levine said, no, that would be politically disastrous for us, take them out, and that's what ended up happening.
The Justice Department joined a Nashville teenager, his parents, and the ACLU, arguing the state law discriminates on the basis of transgender status and violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment.
If the court can announce that we are not protected under the Constitution, it can and will do that for everyone. And the movements that are targeting trans people currently are pushing the false narrative that it is harmful to be trans.
In a statement, the parents of the transgender boy who identifies as a girl say, "We don't want to leave Tennessee, but this legislation would force us to either routinely leave our state to get our daughter the medical care she desperately needs, or to uproot our entire lives and leave Tennessee altogether. No family should have to make this kind of choice." Sapir points out, however, that research on so-called gender-affirming care shows it can harm kids, both short and long-term, leading England and several other European countries to limit the treatments.
Puberty blockers are associated with risks such as cognitive impairment, bone density problems, brittle bones, sexual dysfunction, and of course sterility when they're coupled with cross-sex hormones, lifelong sterility. There are serious risks that come from these interventions, and I haven't even gotten into the surgery issue. And so it's perfectly reasonable. In fact, it's completely justified for states to say, this is an ongoing, uncontrolled medical experiment on children, and we're going to regulate it. We're going to make sure that kids have the ability to understand what they're getting themselves into before they can possibly give consent to these treatments.
Many detransitioners are also warning their peers about the danger and the trauma of these often drastic procedures.
Whatever your issue is, cutting your body up is not going to solve that.
How do you respond to those who say, well, some of the stuff is reversible? You can change your mind.
I wish it was reversible.
Both experts believe the Supreme Court will deliver a sweeping victory to Tennessee and uphold age restrictions for transgender surgeries, something more than 24 states already do. Their big concern now is the other states that have no age restrictions for irreversible, life-altering trans surgeries, which they argue is more about politics than science and could put countless children in danger. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Thank you, Wendy. Bigger picture, I think Levine is one of the reasons why voters turned out the way they did and why you saw the election results that we all saw. Common sense Americans and Americans who love children are saying enough is enough. When you've got kids who can't vote, can't buy booze, without parents' permission can't get a tattoo or their ears pierced, but the medical community is able to experiment and profit and make an awful lot of money for many years off these children, we've got a big problem. You know, remember being a teenager? decision making is difficult, and we're expecting these kids to make informed decisions about sex changes. And you heard people there who regret their transition, saying cutting off a body part does not compensate for the emotional pain I'm in. And when we see liberal nations who are putting up guardrails, it should really speak to us. And you know, people have empathy for parents of trans. I know I do. And what do they need? Do they need our pity? Maybe not, but they need us to be empathetic and compassionate and listen. But they don't need a medical community barging in to make profits off these children. I mean, this infuriates most Americans, most parents, because the regret many people have, there's such trauma involved in it.
Well, I think it's also, you know, we're talking about freedom here, and the freedom to be able to change your mind if you want to is gone if you've had some of these procedures. So you know, the very thing you talked about is there are reasons we don't allow minor children to make some of those decisions. They're not ready. You know, it's common sense. It's finally, you see some people standing up and saying so.